Hey everyone, it's Star Wars week. That means I'm going to do some videos on Star Wars. Might be a little rambling. I did some recording and I realized wasn't explaining the story very well. I was just kind of jumping here and there and rambling on and rambling on and rambling on and So, hopefully this time I'll be a little more focused. I'll tell the story a little bit more coherently and better. I make zero promises because never make a promise you can't keep. So, thank you for listening in for this ramble of Star Wars. I'm going to try to do one trilogy for each day, starting with the original trilogy, then the prequel, then the sequel. And then on the 4th, I'm going to try to do like video games, books, and stuff like that. And we'll see how that goes. So, yeah. Here we go. So, when Star Wars first came out, I wasn't around for the time. First introduction to Star Wars was 97, 98, somewhere around there, when the special editions VHSs were coming out. The first one for me was the special edition for Return of the Jedi, where in the very beginning, before the movie even played, they went through a small documentary with updating with CG graphics and taking out some of the puppets. Ones I remember is them taking out the two singers from Jabba's palace with the really weird lip creature thing. I don't know why they felt it was necessary to have a creature that looked like that. But they did show some footage of the original puppets, and while the CG does not look very good at all in my opinion, it looks dramatically better than the puppet with the lips on the microphone itself. So it was a small improvement. I wouldn't say it's the greatest. And then after that, I wanted to get into Star Wars more to find out more about the universe, about in it and all that. And that's pretty much what I did. I think rented all of them on VHS from Blockbuster. If that doesn't age me, I don't know what else will. And enjoyed them. Started playing some of the games on the Nintendo 64, and it was the 64 at the time, and then the GameCube, and then the original Xbox. I never had the PlayStation. So, the stories were very good. I mean, they weren't like, I'm going to say, so many different threads or hidden messages or twists and turns and yada yada yada, like a lot of movies today feel like they need to have with, I'm going to get into The Last Jedi, but with twists and turns like in The Last Jedi. Simple farm boy wanting to do more, then realizing he probably should just stay at home, and forced to go out to help because home was attacked. Basically the first one, where Luke wanted to join the Imperial Academy. His uncle said no, and two travelers, I'll say, the C-3PO and R2-D2, and they're not technically travelers, they're droids on a mission, come into his life, and when they do, everything changes. The old wizard, being Obi-Wan Kenobi, aka Ben Kenobi, teaches the farm boy the ways of magic with the cocky smuggler Han Solo, and they save the Princess Leia. So I mean, it's not a super complicated story. It's a story that's repeated many, many, many times over, and will probably be repeated over until the end of time. But I think it was just when it came out, it was a very new type, not new type, but you know what I mean, a different style of movie that had been then had been around at the time, where it was anti-heroes and very dramatic soap opera style movies. Even having a full orchestra at the time for scores was different, since it was a lot of synthetics and disco scores. So it basically starts off with ship chasing the ship, and the two droids C-3PO and R2-D2 on the smaller ship that's captured by the evil Empire. And we're introduced to four of the main cast, as I said, the droids, and then Princess Leia, and then Darth Vader. Darth Vader very clearly being evil, being in the symbolic all black with the evil looking helmet, the face being covered in the big flowing evil cape. And definitely, I mean, even still to this day, it's one of the more dramatic and poignant intros for a villain. Just stepping in, everything around him is white. Even the stormtroopers are all in white armor, and there he is with the breathing apparatus working on him, and he's just in black, this tall, imposing figure. And then we cut to Princess Leia giving R2 something, and very clearly she's a good guy because she's cloaked all in white, and obviously for symbolism, black and white, good and evil, and all that. So she gets captured as the droids escape to a desert planet with Luke, the farm boy. And it's very clear that Vader has no patience for anyone at all, as he is lovingly hugging someone's throat with one hand, lifting him off the floor. So droids get captured and then bought by Luke's uncle, and it's through R2 that Luke meets, or we are introduced to Ben Kenobi, who Luke has met before, and we don't know for what purposes, and at the time it's not really necessary or relevant to the movie. And one line that Luke says, well, this belongs to Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Ben goes, well, that's a name I haven't heard in a long time, and Luke goes, oh, you know him? Thinking like brother or relative, because they both have the name Kenobi. And Ben goes, oh no, he's me. And one of the things for me would be that was probably too soon of a reveal. Just going like, oh yeah, well, I'm Obi-Wan Kenobi. You've only known me as Ben your entire life, but no, I have another name. So that's something that kind of, back when I first saw it, didn't bug me, but nowadays it's like, what? And Luke immediately goes, oh, well, the droid must be yours, instead of going, okay, Ben, sure, you're Obi-Wan. So, just one of those things where it's a little weird that he just suddenly goes, oh yeah, well, this is just a hiding name I've been going under for the last, I think, what, at this point, with the new canon, 10 years? Or something like that. I don't know what the new canon timeline is, but 10 years doesn't make sense. It had to be like 20 or something. Anywho, Ben / Obi-Wan wants to train Luke in the ways of the Force, or magic system. And as much as Luke wants to go, he just goes, oh, well, I gotta stay, help my aunt and uncle out on the farm, and very reluctant, which is a 180 turn from how he was earlier in the movie, where very rambunctious, adventurous, wanted to go out And I'm sure that was an editing fault on George Lucas's part, which not a huge deal, but again, looking back at it, it's like, okay, that's a weird twist. And then he finds out his aunt and uncle are dead, and then he's like, okay, yeah, I'll go with you. I want to learn the ways of the Force like my father did. And they go to Mos Eisley, the most... You'll never find a more vile pit of scum and villainy. Which, I mean, is a great descriptor of saying this is a shit town. And we're introduced to a force power, the Jedi mind trick, or just the mind trick, where the caster makes alters the thought process of the victim. In this case, it was, hey, these aren't the droids you're looking for. And the stormtrooper's like, oh, yeah, well, these aren't the droids we're looking for. You can go along your business. And yeah, so it does give us an insight of how powerful the Force can be if it can influence the minds of others. And Obi-Wan follows up with, it works on the weak-minded, which doesn't help the stormtroopers at all. Saying, oh, well, they're just weak-minded fools. They enter a bar where they meet Han Solo and Chewbacca, the smugglers. We're also introduced to how strong the weapon of a Jedi is, the lightsaber. It can cleanly cut through a being's arm. When in the movie there was a pile of blood, later versions of Star Wars, usually the cuts are bloodless and the wounds are cauterized instantly just because how hot the lightsabers can run. But in the original trilogy, they're a little more bluntish, I guess, because there's times where they cut through mechanical parts and it still shows frayed wires and all that. And this is the first time we're seeing it in use, so I don't know if they said, oh, it's going to be super hot, so let's just throw a limb down here that has some blood. And we also are introduced to a controversial scene, or at least it's controversial in the last few years. Now, admittedly, like I said before, I've never seen the unedited or special editions of Star Wars, but I do recall, because also admittedly it's been a while since I've seen the movies, with Greedo trying to collect the bounty on Han. That in the originals, I believe Han shot first and killed Greedo. In the later versions, it looks like a very poorly edited Han moving his head out of the way. Like, it literally looks like it's a jerk. Which, I mean, it could have been, that's how he played it, but again, it looks fake. It looks like it's CG'd in. I'm gonna stop trying to use the same adjectives and words all the time. Then we're introduced to the Millennium Falcon, Han's ship, which is supposed to be the fastest ship in the entire galaxy, and it looks old, it looks run down. I mean, yeah, I'm sure there would be doubts when you see an old clunker like that, like, oh, well, how can this be the fastest ship? How can this be the fastest anything? It's not even that good. But Han and Chewie show that they can outrun Star Destroyers or these massive ships with, I think, like 5,000 crew members on it. I know there's going to be people out there who know every little detail, like, well, you're wrong. And I'm just like, okay, cool, whatever. Anyway, and given the limitations of, I'm going to say, not budget, but animation, back then they used real ships and stuff like that, so they used real props to do all the space shots, which was awesome. Which I think they need to do a lot more of these days. But they didn't use the full abilities of being able to go up and down, flips and turns and twists and all that. Which is alright. I'm not bitching and moaning about that, but when Han says, I got some maneuvers they'll never know, and it just shows the next shot with the Falcon and the Star Destroyers going to the left ever so slightly, and I know Family Guy made fun of that back when Family Guy was still kind of funny. In order to escape the Empire, the Falcon has to go through hyperdrive, and this is something you're going to have to remember later for the sequel trilogy. Light speed, or hyperdrive, has to be calculated. It has to go through a computer to say, yes, this path is clear, this is good, there's nothing you're going to run into. No black holes, no asteroid fields, no nothing. Because your trip will be ended very quickly. Yes, please remember that. And then they escape. Woo, yay. We cut back to Leia being tortured by Darth Vader, and she's very resilient to the torture, which shows she's strong-willed and strong-minded. Not even the torture droid can get information out of her. And one of the major villains, Grand Moff Tarkin, says, why don't we use a different method? They're on a space station called the Death Star, and this space station is why the smallest ship for the rebels were attacked earlier in the very first scene of the movie. So they go to Leia's homeworld of Alderaan, and Tarkin gives her an ultimatum. Tell us where the rebel base is, or your homeworld is destroyed. And, of course, Leia being the good girl, she said, okay, well, they're on Dantooine. And Tarkin's like, okay, cool, thank you for giving us this information. You may fire when ready, and he literally says Dantooine is too far to make a notable impression of the station's firepower. So we're going to destroy Alderaan. And that kind of gives us the notion or the idea that if this world, Alderaan, is destroyed, the entire galaxy is going to take notice. If Dantooine is destroyed, that'd be like, I don't know, that would be like us dropping a nuke in the middle of, I'm just making up in the middle of one of the deserts where no one is or anything like that. And destroying Alderaan would be like, well, obviously, a certain day, certain month, and a certain year that happened where the whole world will notice. So that's kind of what I got out of that. Get back to the Millennium Falcon, where Obi-Wan is training Luke with the lightsaber, and he said he looks in pain. And Luke asks what's going on. He says, as if a million voices cried out in pain and were suddenly silenced. Meaning through the Force, Obi-Wan felt Alderaan being destroyed and all those lives being lost all at once. Which would be, I would imagine, being a very uncomfortable feeling, kind of like a Spider-Man in Infinity War where he's about to be disintegrated and he says, I don't feel so good. I would imagine something akin to that. Obi-Wan then puts a blaster helmet, which is just basically a helmet with no eyes, on Luke and says, use the Force to deflect these bolts. And Han's making fun of, like, saying, I've seen a lot of things throughout this galaxy, but there's nothing as good as a simple blaster. Which, yes, I could definitely see that being a thing. Especially with today, with like, oh, you never bring a knife to a gunfight situation. But Luke blocks all the blasted bolts and says, I did feel something. I felt like I could see everything. And Obi-Wan's like, oh, well, you've just taken a much larger step into... You've just taken a small step into a much larger world. Then the Falcon exit hyperdrive ends up in the ruins of Alderaan. And then they are captured by the Death Star, and they're given a simple mission. two separate missions. Deactivate the tractor field that pulled them in the first place, and get Leia off. Now, they don't realize Leia's on there at first, but very quickly find out that she's on there. So Obi-Wan goes to deactivate the tractor field, and Luke and Han and Chewie go save the princess. While Han and Luke are going to go free the princess from the prison cells, there's a clip where Mark Hamill, Luke, says, "I can't see a thing out of these helmets," and that actually was not one of the original lines. That was a complete ad-lib where Mark Hamill was complaining that he couldn't see out of his costume, which later adds to the stormtroopers can't hit anything memes that started going around, 10 years at this point or something like that. I don't keep track of memes. They get to Leia. Leia says, "Aren't you a little short to be a stormtrooper?" to Luke, and Luke is like, "Oh, well, I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to save you." And we also get more indications that Leia is definitely more free-willed, or not as dependent on people rescuing her as a lot of other damsels in distress in that genre, because she's the one who gets them out of the prison block and pretty much says, "Someone's got to save our skins." And they almost get crushed to death because they end up in a garbage chute, which is one of the weirdest things the prison is connected to, is a garbage chute. But R2 and C-3PO save their skins. So keep in mind, we have three different parties. We have R2-D2 and C-3PO away from everyone else, Obi-Wan deactivating the tractor field, and Han, Luke, Chewie, and Leia all trying to get back. So we got three parties separated from the Millennium Falcon, all trying to make the way back and try not to do too much damage, I guess is the proper. But the droids aren't really going to be doing much, since when they get to the hangar, they just kind of hide out. Han and Chewie, mostly Han, are chasing stormtroopers, trying to be showing male bravado, I guess. And it's kind of funny because he's chasing some stormtroopers, yelling at the top of his lungs, and then he rounds a corner, and in the original cut, there wasn't a lot of stormtroopers, but he rounds a corner and there's a couple more, and he's like, "Ah!" and starts running away again. Chewie sees this, and Han's like, "Run, Chewie, run!" and they start running. In the edited version, he runs into a hall of stormtroopers, like in another hangar. And I don't like this particular cut simply because there's a couple more troopers like looking at him, but it's very clearly a painting or a drawing or something, because everyone's just standing perfectly still. And that was definitely one of the more disappointing add-ons that they did. Luke and Leia use a grappling hook to cross a bridge that's out, and I remember in the documentary, Leia, or Carrie Fisher, kissed Mark Hamill saying good luck, because there was no safety equipment at the time. Imagine two people swinging on a very thin metal wire. So yeah, good luck, Mark, and thank God you made it on the first take. Obi-Wan successfully shuts down the tractor beam, and it's hidden for the most part. No one ever sees him until the very end, where all the parties are starting to come back together. Obi-Wan and Vader meet, and Vader says, "Last time we met, I was the apprentice, but this time I'm the master." And Obi-Wan just says, "A master of evil, Darth," and they engage in very simplistic swordplay. And technical reason is because the sticks that they had reflective tape, and if they hit the tape with each other, it would start breaking apart. And Sir Alec Guinness, I mean, he was an aged man at that point, so probably a little more simplistic for him. The original choreographer said that they wanted to have a proper English gentleman stance, but they had katana, so they had to change it up a little bit. So that's why the sword fight looks very simplistic and all that, for technical reasons. And in story reasons would be it's two extremely experienced sword masters. I mean, Obi-Wan had trained Anakin or Vader for years, and Vader was considered one of the best sword fighters out there. So each one calculating the other's moves, essentially. So all parties end up in or near the hangar with the droids and Han, Luke, Leia, and Chewie in the Falcon. And Luke sees Obi-Wan fighting Vader and stops. And Obi-Wan is clearly surrounded by stormtroopers and Vader, and he realizes he's not getting out and he needs Luke to get out, so he sacrifices himself. And Luke almost ruins that by giving away his position and the stormtroopers snapping to it. And then we're introduced to another Force ability where we hear the voice of Obi-Wan saying, "Run, Luke, run." So Falcon gets away. There's a small dogfight where they based it off of old World War II footage, which is nice. They had the TIE fighters, again, practical effects, flying by the ship, and you hear the engines, the iconic engines. I'm not even going to attempt to mimic them. And then the lasers being hit, and we cut to Han and Luke shooting the turrets, which look like AA guns. And again, they based this off of old World War II footage. They win, and Leia said, "Oh, well, that was way too easy. Something's not right." And Han said something to the effect of, "Well, you think that was easy?" And Leia's like, "Yeah, they're tracking us, and it's not over yet." And cut to Grand Moff Tarkin saying, "Are you sure this was a good idea, Vader? We're risking a lot by just placing this tracker on them." And it was kind of weird that Leia said, "Oh, well, that was too easy. They must have a tracker on us." And then we're instantly confirmed that, yeah, they had a tracker on them. So that was weird. Cut to the Rebel base where they start looking at the plans of the Death Star that Leia given R2 in the beginning. And Han decides this is time for him to leave. And Luke joins the rebellion as a pilot. So things are starting to come to a head. And with the Death Star coming to the Rebel base, the pilots, or the rebels, launch a final counter strike, proceed to attack the Death Star. And they can't use big ships because the Death Star has major anti-aircraft weaponry, but smaller crafts can easily avoid those. So that's what they do. They learn there's a small exhaust port this size, I think they said 2 meters or something like that, something really small. And this is where the iconic trench run comes in. Vader also joins the fighter fight and starts taking out people who are in the trench. We have a close call with the hit, with the vent almost being hit, but that is failed because the missiles hit the wall. Luke goes in, and one of his wingmen is taken out, the other is damaged, so he leaves. And Luke is about to be taken out, but Han makes a last-minute return and saves Luke's butt. And through the Force, Luke launches the missiles, and they go straight into, well, not straight, they go into the exhaust port. The Death Star blows up, Moff Tarkin is taken out, and the rebels are safe. And it kind of is open-ended because Vader is still out there. They show his ship being flung into space. Yeah, no, it's a very good movie. There's a lot of stuff that, like I was going over a little bit earlier, a lot of weird things, especially with the trench run. If they knew if the vent was facing upwards comparatively to the trench run, why would they use the trench? Why would not go straight down, or like use the trench and shoot up and then shoot back down? Because missiles obviously don't curve or turn unless there's some outside force. And like the first time, as I said, the targeting computer said, "Okay, you're good, you're locked on." The pilot shoots the missiles, and the missiles just slam into the wall. And it's just like, okay, well, what were you expecting? But since Luke is the hero, missiles curve in and blow up the Death Star. So, I don't know. During the trench run, we're shown that Luke definitely has a powerful connection to the Force, because Obi-Wan, once again, says to him, uses the Force, Luke, and Luke turns off the targeting computer, and that's why he's able to hit the port. And Vader says the Force is strong with this one, so we get an indication. This is a very good indication that he's going to be a Jedi later, and obviously with him being the hero. Onto The Empire Strikes Back. Woohoo! Shown right away that the Empire is looking for the rebels. Nothing new, because the rebels rebelling against the established government, and they're on a snow planet. We're going to know they're on a snow planet because one of the recon droids that the Empire sends out lands there, and then we're cut immediately to Luke trying to investigate what was going on, or placing motion trackers. That's right, they were placing motion trackers. Luke gets captured by a monster. Han returns to the rebel base at the time, and it shows Han and Leia are giving each other the looks. But Han is still trying to leave because Jabba has placed a bounty on him and doesn't want to put the rebels in any more danger. As he's leaving, Leia's like, "Oh, you're just leaving us. We need good pilots like you." And Han's like, "Oh, well, you want me to stay." And it's very clearly showing that this movie is definitely going to be the romantic movie of the trilogy, which is fine. It's cool. Nothing wrong with that. And when they learn Luke hasn't come back, Han is determined to get him back and goes out at night where temperatures drop down to whatever temperature people freeze at. We're also introduced to a new force power, which is Force Pull, with Luke hanging upside down in the creature's cave that captured him earlier. He's able to pull the lightsaber to him to free himself from the roof. It shows that it takes a lot of concentration on his part, meaning that he hasn't fully embraced the Force quite yet. He has the concept of it, he understands the basics of it, but nothing that's going to ultimately save his skin in the middle of a fight. As he's escaping, fun fact, when you see him running out of the Wampa cave there, it's actually him running out of the hotel that the cast and crew were staying at during filming. So George literally threw out a camera guy, said, "Stay right here," said Mark, "Go." And that's how he escapes the Wampa cave. He's escaping the hotel they're staying in. You should definitely look up information on documentaries on all this. But when Luke gets out, he's passing out because he's freezing to death. Obi-Wan visits him, saying, "Go to the Dagobah system. There you'll meet Yoda, the guy who trained me." Luke gets saved by Han through Han shoving him in a dead Tauntaun. And in the morning, they're both rescued by the rebels in a new spacecraft called the Snowspeeder. Luke recovers, and this is where the weird kiss comes in, where Leia just grabs Luke and kisses him after taunting Han. And this is weird because later we find out they're brother and sister. They didn't know at the time, obviously, but it's still weird. The Empire arrives in glorious fashion, using AT-ATs, all-terrain attack transports. And once again, those were all practical effects, stop motion used, which takes hours, if not days, if not weeks, if not months. And it's still better than what we have today. So using the snow speeders, the rebels are able to delay the Empire long enough for everyone to escape via ships. Now, one of my gripes about all Star Wars movies is the lack of use of space itself. And again, I understand that they were using more like World War II, World War I tactics, where ships didn't always go around enemy vessels and stuff like that, or U-boats or anything like that. But when you're constantly heading towards your enemies who have superior firepower or superior ships and all that, my first thought would be, let's go away. where everything's less effective and stuff like that. But that's just me. The reason they do this is, again, World War II style combat, but in the universe they use an ion cannon to disable enemy ships, kind of like an EMP. And again, I mean, in universe that part makes sense, but in my head it's just like, that doesn't make sense. But I'm not a movie writer, I'm not a story writer. I leave it to better minds than my own. Everyone's like, hey Luke, you gonna join us? And Luke's like, no, I gotta go somewhere else for the time being. You guys go on without me. Han takes Leia, but they're a little late, so they end up getting separated from everyone. They get chased by the Empire the most that we see. I don't know if the Empire chased the rest of the rebels, simply because we're focused more on Han and Leia and Chewie, C-3PO and R2. So with that, Luke heads to the Dagobah system, crash lands there, meets a small green creature. We later learn the creature is Yoda. Yoda kind of messes with Luke, tearing his stuff apart, testing his patience and all that. And Luke is very impatient. It's like, I don't even know why we're standing here. I'm waiting. I need to meet a great warrior, great master of the Force, and this small creature that doesn't even come up to my knee can't possibly be him. And Obi-Wan pretty much goes, Luke, you do realize this is Yoda, right? And Luke quickly changes his attitude, and he's still in a rush to learn and all that, but he's like, oh, hi, Yoda. So Yoda reluctantly trains him, like very reluctantly, and that will come to play later for Last Jedi Defenders. Got to Han, Leia, and Chewie in a asteroid field, and the Empire is obviously doing whatever they can to find them. Vader is told that the Emperor himself is trying to contact him, and Vader says, okay, let's get out. We need to talk to him as clear signal. In the original cut, they used a old actress, and they made her eyes buggy to make the Emperor. In the remastered versions, they changed that up to the modern actor who plays him, which is a big improvement. Honestly, I'd never seen the original one, as I said multiple times, but this was definitely one of the better changes. The Emperor says to Vader, get Luke no matter what, because he's strong in the Force and I want him. So it goes from kill them to capture the rebels to make Luke come to them. And after Han and Leia and Chewie escape the asteroid field, they go to Cloud City, where one of Han's old friends, Lando Calrissian, is. And Lando runs Cloud City, a gas mining colony. There, Lando does what he can to keep them happy and preoccupied until it's revealed that the Empire had beaten the good guys there first, and made a deal with Lando saying, hey, you give us these guys, we'll leave you alone, kind of thing. And Lando, trying to keep Cloud City free from the Empire as much as possible, agrees. Now, obviously, this is supposed to be like, oh, well, Lando, you're a bastard. How could you do that kind of thing? But I think practically it makes sense. So, Han is the only one shown being tortured. Chewie's tortured by sound, kind of, but not really tortured. Han's the only one shown that, and we assume Leia was to some degree. And Lando reveals what Vader's plan is. Obviously, Leia is like, oh, well, we gotta stop this, and can't stop it. Because Luke senses that they're in trouble and wants to help them. And before that, he enters a cave where he sees Vader. He attacks Vader and beats him, but when the helmet blows up, it shows Luke's face on there, meaning that it's entirely possible that Luke will become Vader or someone like Vader, and that kind of freaks him out, but he still doesn't get it. So When Luke goes to rescue his friends, obviously it's a trap, and Vader almost captures him, but fails because Luke's potency in the Force has increased and he's a little better. But the problem is he's so unfocused because his friends were in pain. He's tapping into the dark side of the Force, which is considered evil. Vader beats him down, and when they are in the final area, which is basically a gangway over a giant massive hole, Vader not only cuts off Luke's hand, but reveals to Luke that he is indeed Luke's father. The concept of Luke's father, which was brought up once in a while, it wasn't a huge deal for the movie. It was mentioned a couple times in A New Hope, the original Star Wars. It was he's too much like his father back in the day. Your father was the greatest friend I've ever known. He was a great swordsman, one of the best pilots out there, but it wasn't Luke's entire character was wrapped around trying to find out who his father was. I want you to keep it in mind for character development later in the sequel trilogy. And Vader tries to convince Luke to join him to defeat the Emperor and rule the galaxy as father and son. Luke says no by falling off the gangway into the pit. He gets pulled into an exhaust port and almost falls out of... Well, he does fall out of the city. He almost falls into the clouds, but is saved by antennas that he grabbed onto. Now, Leia, Lando, and Chewie and the two droids are escaping because Han has been captured at this point and is being taken to Jabba the Hutt for the bounty. And Leia hears Luke plea for a rescue and says, okay, we're going to go back and rescue him. They save him, and once again, as they're escaping, Darth Vader's ship is there, and Darth Vader is waiting, and makes one more attempt to convince Luke to join them. And Luke just says no, basically says no by ignoring him, and says, Obi-Wan, why didn't you ever tell me? And last scene is where Luke is getting a new hand, and they put synthetic skin on it so it wouldn't be too much of a hassle later on for budget-wise. And a plan is being formulated to rescue Han from Jabba. Now, this definitely was a much better movie from the first one since they had a bigger budget. Because, fun fact, the original Star Wars never was meant to exist. Fox Studios didn't care for it at all. And the only reason it got made was because George Lucas had a friend on the board who kind of greenlit it, but said, hey, you got to wrap this up real quick. And you have next to no money for anything. And it went on forever in terms of making movies, where I think they went over budget. They had to reshoot it at least twice, or once. I mean, they did the original shots and then reshoots. But yeah, with the success of Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back was able to have a bigger budget and different director, which definitely helped, which I will explain in the prequel trilogy. With a bigger budget, new directors and all that, they were able to make a much better film. The Return of the Jedi is the last of the original trilogy. It starts out with a major plan to rescue Han from Jabba the Hutt, where everyone's arriving at different times, different methods to get everyone in place. The droids are offered as gifts by Luke, and of course C-3PO has no idea because 3PO has no filter, and Luke knew if he told 3PO the plan, 3PO would have said something. Whereas R2-D2 was given the message to Jabba. So, droids are captured because Jabba refuses to hand Han over. Then it cuts to Chewie being brought in by a bounty hunter, and the bounty hunter wins Jabba's trust by saying, hey, you don't give me what I want, I'm going to blow everyone up with this grenade. And Jabba's like, hey, you're my kind of scum, we're going to give you what you want. As Chewie is being led into a prison, we see Lando in disguise as a guard. So that's at least 4 people set up in place. Then that night, the bounty hunter that brought Chewie in frees Han from his imprisonment, and it showed that it's Leia. Now things go awry where Leia is found out and is made into a slave dancer girl. And a lot of people think that the outfit Leia is put in is sexy. And my personal opinion, it's not. I don't like it. It just never clicked with me. Anyway, Luke then arrives, declaring himself to be a Jedi Knight. Was it Knight? I completely forget, to be honest. But Luke arrives, gives Jabba another chance to willingly hand Han and his friends back over. And Jabba says no, tries to kill Luke with a monster that's under the throne called a Rancor, that we were introduced a little earlier, of the capability of its capabilities, which is a giant imposing monster that will eat you alive. Luke defeats it. They are then taken out into the Tatooine desert to be fed to the Sarlacc, which is a giant monster that's under the sand and will slowly digest its prey over the course of 1,000 years. Which, of course, wouldn't really matter to anyone who's thrown in there, since they'd probably die of starvation and dehydration within, I think, a week or 2. So either way, it's extremely painful way to go. Luke says, Jabba, this is your last chance. Just hand my friends over and we'll be on our way. And Jabba laughs, and Luke and R2 initiate the plan by R2 launching Luke's lightsaber to him. And since he lost his lightsaber and his original lightsaber in Cloud City, he made a new one, which is green. It was green because George Lucas didn't think a blue lightsaber would look very good with the blue background. Technical reason. In-universe reason, it was because that was Luke's role. Lightsabers apparently change the crystals, choose the users depending on different roles that they all pick, that they go through. Blue is more common. Green is usually for like counselors and those with higher force abilities and stuff like that. The bounty hunter that brought Han in, Boba Fett, is not kicked into, but lands in the Sarlacc pit. Leia chokes Jabba to death with the chains, and all the good guys make it out safe and sound, while all of Jabba's people get killed and his yacht blows up. And yeah, and Boba Fett will make his return later on when the Book of Boba Fett, when he digs his way out of the Sarlacc. That will be another short podcast, and oh my god, this is almost an hour. I'm sorry, guys. Anywho, we cut to the Death Star, where the second Death Star, yes, there are 2. The Emperor had foreseen that the first one would be destroyed, so he said, well, we're going to make a second one. So Darth Vader arrives on the second Death Star and says the Emperor himself will be coming to oversee the last phases of construction of this. Basically saying, hey, we're going to meet the Emperor, the most evil character ever. And there's still articles today that saying Emperor Palpatine, the Emperor, is still considered to be one of the most powerful and memorable villains there is, which I totally see. Yes. I don't know about most powerful, but definitely most memorable, because whenever I hear someone say the Emperor, I instantly think Star Wars. I don't think of anyone or anything else. So after Vader announces that the Emperor is coming, We cut to Luke going back to Dagobah to say to Yoda, I'm ready to finish my training. Yoda says, no more training required. You're already ready to go. And Luke says, oh, I'm a Jedi now. And Yoda pretty much goes, not quite yet. You still have one more thing to do, which is to strike down Vader. And that's when Luke asks the big question, is Vader my father? And Yoda and Obi-Wan both confirm, yeah, he's your father. And Luke is like, well, you want me to kill my father? Why? It's like, dude, he's the most evil, vile being out there next to the Emperor. So yeah, it kind of shows that the Jedi aren't always, aren't always in the mood to just go, okay, yeah, well, you can just let him go kind of thing, or you can try to redeem him. Forgive and forget. He has to die. But Luke's like, I can still sense good in him. I can change him. The Emperor arrives at the Death Star and declares that everything is proceeding as he has foreseen. So basically we learn that the Emperor has the power to see into the future kind of thing. The rebels make one final plan to destroy the second Death Star by going to the forest moon of Endor, where the Death Star is hanging out at. And basically it's going to be a land battle and a space battle, where the land forces need to take out a shield protecting it, and the space forces will destroy the Death Star. So Luke, Han, Leia, and... forgot to mention, Obi-Wan also tells Luke that there's a second person out there, a second Skywalker, and Luke instantly picks up that it's Leia. This will come into relevance later. So yeah, Luke, Leia, Han, Chewie, and the two droids will go to the surface of the moon, shut down the shields, while Lando will lead the space forces, along with Admiral Akbar, who we were just introduced. And again, this character will come up in the sequel trilogy Complaints. So on the forest moon, Leia gets separated from the main group after a fight on speeder bikes, and everyone gets captured by Ewoks, which are small teddy bears that come up to the knee. They get captured, they almost get killed, but they are able to convince the Ewoks that they're on their side and they just need their help to find the shield generator. Luke leaves this group and hands himself over to the Empire and makes another attempt to free Vader from the chains of the Emperor, but Vader pretty much says, no, the Emperor is your new master and he's gonna finish your training. And we also learned that Vader's original name was Anakin Skywalker, a name that no longer holds any value over Vader. So Luke is taken to the Emperor himself, and the Emperor says, I can't wait to complete your training. Very soon you'll call me Master. The rebels arrive at the shield generator, attempt to destroy it, but are quickly captured, because, again, the Emperor foresaw it coming. And the Space Forces arrive, realize the shield isn't down, and turn into the fleet of Star Destroyers. Like, it's a big fleet. And I think this is the first space battle where they actually do take advantage of the different angles of space. But is also where the now famous line, "It's a trap," comes from Admiral Akbar. Because it literally was a trap for everyone. And the Emperor is using all this, forcing Luke to watch his friends die as a catalyst to make Luke join him. Luke almost kills the Emperor in rage. Vader stops him and they go into a duel. And throughout the duel, Luke is like, I can feel you, I can feel the struggle, just let go of your hate, join me. And Vader says, it's too late for me, son. Towards the end of the fight, Vader tries to convince Luke to join him, otherwise he'll use Leia. Luke gets upset and pretty much goes fully over to the dark side. When he does, he almost kills Vader. The Emperor says, strike him down and join me at my side at your rightful place. Luke sees that Vader has a robotic hand, looks at his own hand, and is like, no, I'm done. Says, you failed, your highness. I'm a Jedi as my father was before. I'm a Jedi master like my father before me. Meaning he gave up. Like, he just doesn't want to fight anymore. He's done. And since he's not going to strike Vader down in anger or the Emperor, he has ascended, I guess. The Emperor says, so be it, Jedi, and proceeds to Force lightning Luke to death. And Force lightning, even to this day in the new canon and old canon, Force lightning is considered to be the pinnacle of dark side powers. Vader sees this, watches them do it, and chooses to save Luke and toss the Emperor over the edge, thus the edge of a pit, which I don't know why there's a pit. Why would anyone go, oh, well, I want this to be as evil looking as possible. I want to have an evil chair. I want to have evil windows. Oh, throw in a pit while we're at it. But yeah, there's a pit. The Emperor falls down in it and is killed. We'll go back to that. So as Luke and Vader are fighting, the space battle's going on. Admiral Ackbar's like, we need a retreat. Lando's like, no, we got to give them more time. They've got to give them more time. They're down there. They're working on it. And yes, the land forces are working on trying to get the shield generator, but they were captured. And then they were freed by the Ewoks, who hilariously take down the the Imperial forces down there. And through a small trick, the rebels are able to get back into the shield generator and destroy it. And once they destroy it, Lando and a couple of others go into the Death Star and destroy the core. And as it's exploding, the rebel fleet is trying to get away, and the ships that went in are getting out. And Luke is dragging Vader's body through the Death Star. Now, my thought process now would be, well, why didn't anyone shoot Luke? Because he's pulling a dead body around. Or at least even try to help him. But whatever. Whenever Luke reaches a shuttle, Vader says, let me see you at least one time with my own eyes. And Luke takes off the mask and pasty guy. And there's a giant scar on his head, meaning something happened to him. And he says, now go, save yourself. Luke says, I got to save you. And Vader literally says, you already have, Luke. Tell your sister you're right about me. And yeah, that was just a line that like hits hard, because only one person believed in Vader being good in any capacity. And so the film wraps up with the Empire being more or less over. The new version, they show different worlds celebrating and toppling over Imperial propaganda pieces like a statue of the Empire on the capital world. Whereas in the original trilogy, that didn't happen. It was just that the rebels celebrating on Endor, which I think was a better choice, just having the rebels celebrate, not showing other worlds, because the Empire is still technically in charge. I think showing other worlds celebrating the death of the Emperor wasn't the best idea. And speaking of best ideas, originally when Vader threw the Emperor off the railing, he didn't say anything, he just did it. In the latest iterations, they had Vader yell, no. It went, no. No. It was just unnecessary, and it took away from the moment. Like, it was so much better for him just silently pick up the Emperor and throw him off instead of him yelling no. When I heard that the first time, I was like, oh, you guys messed up. And yes, this was not George Lucas's idea. This was after Disney purchased Star Wars. So that was Disney's fault. Anywho, back to the celebration, because we see 3 Force ghosts show up. One of Obi-Wan, one of Yoda, and then one of Anakin Skywalker. In the original one, it was a older gentleman who was standing in as Obi-Wan. As Anakin. In the new one, it was Hayden Christensen. Now, normally, I wouldn't moan and groan about it, but it just looks out of place. It is weird that they decided to use Hayden Christensen when he turned evil instead of using the original footage where Anakin was redeemed. But again, that was George Lucas. That one was George Lucas's call. So, but yeah, that wraps up the original trilogy, and I know I've gone on for the longest time I've gone. I definitely want to try to keep the other ones shorter than this, but honestly, the original trilogy is good. It's great. It's near perfect. I'm not going to say it is perfect. There's a lot of here's and there's where it's like, okay, well, they could have done this better. They could have done that better. I'm glad they kept this story simple without all these different hidden themes and meetings and twists and turns, and obviously the biggest twist being Vader being Luke's father and Leia being Luke's sister. Like, those are the biggest twists of the movie. Again, perfectly fine, simple, nothing like, oh my god, this contradicts everything. Which I will be getting into later, because a lot of the new stuff. Anywho, I'm going to wrap this one up, guys. Almost an hour and 10 minutes. I know it's a long time to hear me talk and stuff. So, thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.